Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. Thank you very much for joining us this wonderful Thursday evening. I hope you're all having a wonderful week, and I hope the week has treated you well. It feels like Friday can only come too soon, frankly, which is a wonderful thing. So tonight we're going to be talking about the drone rules in the UK specifically. We're going to be talking about a slightly, clicky title from the point of view of who broke the drone rules, and we will come through and we will explain exactly what we mean by that and break down where we are, what's happening, and where we think to go next, along with my esteemed colleagues on the panel. I said esteemed, not steaming. But really, from hobbyist to professional, and from Mini 3 Pro user to bespoke purpose-built drone flyer, the last few months have been littered with issues from everything from VLOS guidance to debates over bubbles. Every type of drone user in the UK has been impacted in some way or another by changes, errors, and frankly confusion that has surrounded the hobby and industry. Tonight, the Geeksvana editorial team will look at the how, the why, and who behind where we sit, and look at what needs to be done to bring stability and confidence to a shaken UK drone world, frankly. Now, one thing I do want to establish very quickly with everybody before we bring the panel in this evening and we start the show properly is I wanted to address an issue which has been growing in strength recently and reset perhaps some of the misunderstanding, as I see it, which surrounds our mission to support the UK drone world with clear and open information here at Geeksvana. We as a channel and a group of contributors believe wholeheartedly in good regulation. We believe that a fair and transparent system of regulation delivers what we all want, which is a safe airspace. We're not a campaign to end drone regulation. It is not our intention for there to be a new Wild West in the skies of the UK and the world. Our voice as a channel, and those individuals' voices of those appearing on this channel, are unique and based on experiences and knowledge from a wide cross-section of the hobby and industry. They should be treated as such, and with respect to what others are trying to achieve and with respect to what others are doing out there, be treated very differently and separately from the campaigns that others might be waging for perhaps more dramatic changes. The current system in basic form in the UK has benefits and drawbacks over the old system, and some of the future innovations which are coming are, in my opinion, sensible and encouraging. Where we do stand in, or rather what we do stand in opposition to, however, is the way the regulation is being communicated to stakeholders and the constant changes to a degree of actually creating instability, which in itself creates a potentially dangerous airspace scenario that could actually, basically good regulation would actually avoid that, which is really what we need here. Now, please keep that in mind while you're watching this show tonight and other content on the Geeksvana channel. As I say, we do support good regulation, but we also need that good regulation to actually be delivered in an appropriate way. And without further ado, we'll bring the panel in to have a chat about all of this. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi, yeah, all good. Who
just threw their mobile phone across the room?
No, I totally missed the cue as always for us coming live on air, but at least I was almost looking at the camera this time when you came to us.
Your microphone's kicking some static up every so often. It's not doing it at the moment though, which is good. But so Airless Mean in the chat just said Matt looking sus. Yes, it's because he's doing 50 other things. I mean, Matt turns, as I've said a million times, Matt turns up about 30 seconds before the broadcast, which is frankly what you would probably expect. But how are you guys? Graham, how are you? Have you had a good couple of weeks since you've been on the channel?
I've been away. I've had a little break and sort of chatted with some interesting people while I've been away. I've got an opportunity, I hope, lined up to fly at a very exciting location, which I'm not even sure I've mentioned to you. I might have done.
You don't talk to me.
Oh, good. I haven't. I've got a secret from Sean. But what I have had is a lot of chats with an awful lot of worried people over the last couple of weeks, and I've been very busy on social media. But I'm sure we'll be talking about that shortly.
We will, absolutely. And of course, your latest blog, your latest article is up on geeksvana.news, which is the second in your 3 C's articles. The first one was
correct
communication, and this one is continuity, I believe. This one.
Continuity of regulations and how we ensure that if we can, and if we can't, what do we do and how do we manage that? And the third one is consistency. So it's the 3 C's. So consistency, I'm hoping to work on this weekend.
Well, let's hope some other people are working on consistency over the weekend as well. And Matt, how are you, sir? How is things at the Drone Mentor Tower been going?
All good, thank you, mate. Not too bad. It's been, we're in to be honest, it's been half term this week for the kids. So I've actually taken a few days off with them and in and around kind of the craziness of everything that's going on at the moment and dealing with communications backwards and forwards and a few bits and pieces that we'll go into throughout the show, I'm sure.
Have you had a busy week then? I didn't, have you released a video or something or?
It's been rather busy since last week's video on the UAV Hub channel. Yeah, so thank you to everyone, by the way, for all the support that we've had. Hilarious, because I got, I think we've had, I mean, it's gone nuts, right? The video, if you've not seen it, there's plenty of links out there. You can't really have missed it, I don't think. Thanks to XYet and people for sharing that. But it was one of those that we put it out there and it went nuts, and it's got like almost 900 likes and 1 thumbs down. I was like, yeah, when the guy from the CAA who actually watches your video puts a thumbs down. So it was quite funny.
Indeed, excellent. And of course we are going to be covering a lot of those points, and we do actually excitingly, we do have a statement from the CAA, which we're going to be reading out in a little bit, regarding specifically the specific category and the confusion surrounding the PDRA 01, which is something which is extremely interesting, frankly. But so do stay tuned for that. So first of all, I wanted to go across some of the key moments that we have enjoyed, he says sarcastically, over the last few months in terms of attempting to use the airspace. And these kind of issues, someone's moving something around. Graham, stop moving stuff around your microphone.
Amateur hour.
It was me.
Let's just put the focus on him there. And we've had a lot of bumps on the road, not only in the tech of this stream and the unprofessional people that I stream with, but also in terms of drone regulation. And I just wanted to go through a few of the highlight points there. Thank you, Ken Heron, for the $20 super chat. Here's a few quid for the RGB bill. Yes, well, between me and Matt, I think we are. Well, actually, no, RGB's low power, but anyway, yes. I get the joke. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you supporting the channel, sir. So the things, the highlights, as it were, and I'm not sure I call them highlights, but the major events are things like, of course, we have moved from an old system to the new EU adopted regs, which was fun and games in itself. Certainly in terms of the fact that there was confusion right up until the last minute in terms of us being in EASA and then out of EASA and then adopting EASA, and now we're reviewing that. And there's been a lot of confusion around that side of things. We of course had a very long period of establishing those EU regs and getting the hobby and industry used to it, and certainly with channels like Mr. MPW, with Geeksvana, and of course all of your work, Matt, over on UAV Hub, etc., and Graham's work online. I felt like we got somewhere in terms of actually getting people somewhere used to what was coming. Unfortunately, we didn't really see any situation where the C label system was really developed in the UK at all. There was no, even I don't see attempts to even get the correct regulatory bodies, oversight bodies, etc., in place. And sadly, the comms to tell us we can't use C label drones in the UK, to confirm that, only came out once the first C1 drone was released, which in itself created that whole period of confusion and really started, I think, to focus a lot of us in on the issues in terms of comms and in terms of how the CAA actually speak to us on these things. That was very closely followed up with CAP 722 and CAP 722H releases, with, of course, those fairly significant errors, which were quickly edited and changed, but of course created again a lot of concern because of how basic some of those errors were. And then of course we had the wonders of the AMC. You would think I'm talking about 10 years here, wouldn't you, in changes? But and then of course we had the wonderful AMC, which was confusing and a very complicated consultation, to the point where when the VLOS disaster, as I call it, actually happened and the new AMC came out, people didn't really know whether or not it was regulation or guidance or whether it's enforceable or not. And actually a lot of people claim it was the first time they've heard of it, which I feel was a lot of that was down to the fact that it was such a complicated consultation process. Now, CAP 722H has also had delays with contradicting releases and rumours and different emails, etc., to stakeholders reporting columns, bubbles, and there's been back and forth on that for an extended period. We do, as I say, we do have a statement from the CAA specifically on that to come up, which is coming up very, very soon. And of course, we have then the email to the RAEs, which asked them not to train the bubble. And now we have things like the Coptus release again, quoting that there is a bubble and that things are going to settle down now, etc. And we're also told that 722H is still under review, but again, the comms around even that is a little bit shaky, shall we say. And to say, this will get Graham smiling, or throwing things at the camera, to say there's inconsistencies with the operational authorizations and OSC revisions. Inconsistency is probably the correct word in terms of the feedback we're getting from people that are actually out there in the field trying to gain these permissions. So that's been a bit of a hectic couple of years, really, hasn't it, guys? I mean, for something that we would hope would be fairly stable, it's fairly crazy.
Yeah, that's all in 2 years, and hence the desire, the demand for some continuity here, because if people don't even have time to learn the rules, how are they going to follow them? And that's across the professionals and the hobby areas.
One of the things that I had fed back to me across a lot of my videos with the interview series with Callum Holland from the CAA and all of the videos, announcing changes with the AMC and everything else like that, is actually that there was a lot of people who felt that they were being that they were feeling let down because they feel that they had followed the rules fairly accurately for as long as they could, and they tried to stay up with the rules, and then they felt like the rug was pulled out from under them, basically. And I had a lot of sympathy for that. Did you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. I'm in one of those moods. No, I have no sympathy for them.
You've just got to mute over me and put no. Yeah, I mean, you talk about that over the last couple of years. The frustrating thing, I think, for most people, it seems, in the community, particularly after the video that went out last week and the comments that we've seen from that, and the response that we've had is, that 2 years that we did, I think, quite a good job of getting people up to speed with what the incoming regulations were going to be and the understanding that we all needed behind that. And I think it kind of made sense to us all, right? All of a sudden, we were going to have this really structured system that meant that, if you wanted to operate at a lower risk level, you could do that with minimal training and minimal regulatory oversight. And if you wanted to do more risky stuff, then you could do that, but you had more oversight and you had to pay more and learn more. And it all kind of made sense, I think, to people. We made it make sense between us as kind of thought leaders in the space, I suppose, ultimately, which is what it came down to. I know, scary, right? But I think the big thing was that most of that change and confusion actually came in not over the last 2 years, but over the last 2 months. And that was where the turmoil came in. And you made a really good point, right, at the beginning. We, particularly the three of us here, right, we are not anti-regulation, we're not anti-rules, we're not anti the regulator, because those regulations actually help for us in our circumstances in the UK. They help to facilitate the safe expansion of the industry, or they should do, right? That's what they were set to do. That was what they used to do. And that's what they're there for. And I've always said that the main reason, I mean, we give our training away for free, as hopefully most people know, right? And I go and speak on stages all over the world. I certainly used to before the COVID days. And our money goes back into educating people, because the longer we can keep it from the here and now to the accident or incident, heaven forbid, that the knee-jerk reaction, as we saw from Gatwick, means we all get stopped from flying. The longer we can make that time period, the better for everybody, because we can provide more evidence that everything's been done safely and that they're not that dangerous, right? It's just the odd occasion. that maybe something, heaven forbid, goes wrong and something happens.
Even if you're doing everything correctly, incidents happen, and that's one of the things we're always told. And on several of the interviews with the CAA on this channel, they talk about, okay, if something goes wrong, if you're doing everything you possibly can, so therefore you are mitigating the risk, etc. If something goes wrong, it does happen. Incidents do happen. Look at manned aviation, crikey, with all the experience they have of mitigating, etc. So it is something where there are going to be mistakes and there are going to be errors, but it bothers me when people, hobbyists especially, get to the point, and now even professionals as well, get to the point where they just have to double think before they actually take off. Am I doing everything 100% correctly here? And they're probably flying a drone stood in a field. And to me, that isn't unlocking innovation, that isn't unlocking the hobby for people to enjoy it. And as we've spoken, Matt, before about taking families out and enjoying these things, model aircraft with kids, etc., and that type of thing, it doesn't give that feeling anymore. And I think we need to get back to where people can act responsibly, act within regulation, but still have that bit of confidence, basically.
Yeah, and I can see people saying it, right? Like and I think it was Mark Armistead just said nobody's anti-regulation. What we are is anti-stability, and that's exactly the point, right? But this is the point. This fluctuation in stability is actually now making some people anti-regulation, and that's really scary. That's really worrying because, yes, the regs a little bit at the moment seem potentially on the draconian side to a lot of people. And I get that,
but that happens when you have a lot of change as well, though, doesn't it? Because
it seems like oh my god, we're getting all these things taken away from us, and actually, if it's just right, this is the status quo, guys. Accept that things do need to be constantly reviewed, and they do need to change as the tech changes and as airspace changes and as different technologies come in and different people want to do different things. It is going to change, but it just needs to slow down and have some stability. Yes. And this was the point I made in the video last week. For me, it needs some leadership and guidance. It needs look, these are the regs, and this is how they're going to be for now. If and when we need to change them, then we will let everybody know properly. We will run it through. We'll consult like like we have done on certain bits in the past. Not that that consultation is necessarily going to have the change, because the regulator's got a job to do. Not everyone is going to like the fact that the regs are the regs. They're never
and they have so many other stakeholders which they need to satisfy. Now we'll come on to the how we fix it in a few minutes. And
jumping ahead,
you are doing the typical.
Sorry, mate. I'll pull the run order.
Run order. What's a run order? But very quickly, thank you to Mads Tech for the £20 super chat. Come on, Heron, you've outbid me now. But yes, if anyone wants to outbid these guys, then do feel free to drop a super chat. I think it's probably one of the only times I've said that in about a year, actually, but there we go. Right, now on with some actual information, and then we'll come on to some of the challenges facing the CAA. I mean, I think we have to recognise some of those, but then talk about the stakeholder engagement and that type of thing. Now, the preamble, the pretext context to this statement is that the RAEs, so the training bodies, the officially appointed, officially recognised training bodies from the CAA, who have to jump through all sorts of hoops to be able to provide you with courses like the A2 CFC, the GVC, etc., but of course are therefore the official training bodies of the Civil Aviation Authority here in the UK. And it is as Matt is smiling to himself next to me, it is a very high bar that you have to reach, quite rightly, to be able to be one of those. There was a meeting this week that actually was called for by Matt and fellow RAEs to basically bring to task some of the issues, because in particular, one of the things I don't like about the changes and inconsistency is because if something changes, like the C1 thing it changed and it didn't change back again. And there wasn't a rumour of it changing back again. And one of the things that frustrates me is when that starts to happen, and when you start to, the good old days of three different people called the CAA and three different people got three different answers. Basically, that doesn't help anybody. So that's the pretext to this. But we do now have this statement which has been released to Geeksvana today from the CAA. So I will just run through it very quickly. We held a very constructive meeting with RAEs this week that enabled us to brief them on the latest developments and plans for the future. The RAEs had specifically requested to be informed prior to us publishing information more generally. Now that meeting has taken place, we can confirm that there have been no changes to the requirements or flying privileges given by using a PDRA 01 risk assessment. We will be publishing an update to the CAP 722H, calm down Graham, publication shortly, which will confirm this. As with all regulatory bodies, we keep our requirements under constant review to make sure they are fit for purpose, and this equally applies to all drone requirements. We will therefore continue to keep all regulations under review, as of course they have to say. And the final slide here, we'd like to apologise for any recent confusion over the use of the PDRA 01. We will aim to work closer with RAE organisations and operators in the future as we consider any developments. Our teams will now be using this latest position in their communications with operators. So that's an interesting statement. It's an interesting one from the point of view of it does give some clarity through some of the rumour and through some of the different comms that have come out from the CAA, even to RAE saying don't train bubble and that type of thing, and the differences that have been happening there. And of course we do also get an apology for some of that confusion. So I suppose taking accountability for some of that confusion which has happened. Graham, you deal on a daily basis with many people from this specific sector who are using the PDRA 01 risk assessment on a daily basis to build and grow their businesses. How do you feel about that statement?
I am now holding my breath and waiting to see what comes out from PDRA 01 and specifically at the risk assessment part of it, because previously the risk assessment had contradictions. So there were contradictions between what was in the risk assessment and what appeared to be the wording on the OA in terms of your operating permissions and limitations. So the devil is in the detail on that one. I'm feeling absolutely battered by the ups and downs of this story. I feel like I've been on a roller coaster, and not necessarily a nice one. Yeah, when it comes out, I believe communication. I'd love to see what form this communication takes, because if it takes the form of something on Skywise coming out saying here's another cap, oh well, we told you about that. I sort of don't think that's enough.
No,
we have got.
It does say somewhere that they're going to.
It needs to be proper communication.
Yeah, as we consider
in the way I discussed in the blog,
and operators and RE, because again, one of the stakeholder groups that's been left out of it is of course the operators on all of this backwards and forth, and they've kind of had to hear from RAEs and hear from the media and hear from online posts of different people getting their conversations with them. But one of the areas which I think definitely needs some accountability to be, we need to hold to account in the future is where they say they'll work closely as they consider any developments. I think that needs to happen. We're not talking about needing to communicate with 3 million people here. We're talking about a few thousand PDRA 01 holders, and it shouldn't be difficult to be able to liaise with these people and talk to them, because of course they are using this risk assessment on a daily basis. So of course they are the people that have by far the most knowledge on it.
Absolutely, and the wording around the bubble is interesting, because my understanding is the REs were told it's a bubble. Don't teach that it's a bubble, but it's a bubble. But if you read the risk assessment in the current version of CAP 722H, it's not so much a bubble. It's fly with caution, good airmanship, which I don't think is a bad idea. I really don't think it's a bad idea. But the operators need to understand that essentially, although it's the CAA's risk assessment, the moment you start overflying people, it's your risk. And I think a lot of operators are actually used to that, because we will say, don't we, in our manuals that the risk lies with the remote pilot, and I hope that we all think that way, that, that's the way we fly. And if something goes wrong, it's on me. We don't think, do you know what? If I crash and hit Auntie Mildred over there, I'm going straight to the CAA to have a go at them. They gave me an incorrect risk assessment. I don't think anybody thought that until recently, when we suddenly realized that, the CAA were giving us the risk assessment and saying that's okay to do that, guys. So yeah, I wait to see what they write in the thing, and I wait to see if they can actually get consistency between what they write in Cap 722H and what they write on their permissions, because at the moment there's inconsistencies there that make a difference to how somebody will fly. And I'm not going to tell them where the inconsistency is, because I'm sure they've got a whole team of people who have already spotted it. But we'll see.
Dig in there at the end.
What I would say to anybody when the new version of Cap 722H comes out, when you get an OA marked against that version of Cap 722H, please send it to me.
And
info@iup.camera.
And frame it, frankly. But
we'll
yes.
see. Yeah.
I mean,
so believe it when I see it.
Where do we think this has all been coming from? This instability I mean, obviously, we're in EASA, we're out of EASA, we're adopting the regulations. I assume there's got to be some kind of issue from the point of view that if you are a member state of EASA, then of course the risk is more spread. You are part of a much larger organization. So if you then use those same rules in an individual state, then all of that risk, all of that accountability is on that single country. That must have some kind of impact in there. But is it at the heart of all of this? Is it communication? Because it seems to me that whenever we have the conversations, there seems to be flexibility with the CAA. There seems to be, flexibility in terms of the operators just want to know what they're supposed to be doing on a consistent basis. But does all of this actually, how much of this, I suppose, is what I'm asking? How much of this, I'll ask you this, Matt, first, how much of this is born in poor communication?
I think pretty much the entire thing, right? I think, let's face it, there's no doubt about it. In the UK at the moment, in particular, we are in a state of turmoil when it comes to lawmaking, when it comes to the highest levels of leadership within the country. Like, whichever way we look at it, there is a lot of turbulence and instability from the governmental level, and that obviously, I guess, has a knock-on effect, right? Because that ultimately knocks on to the DFT, which knocks on to the CAA, which knocks on to the end users, which knocks on to the hobbyists, and it just trickles down, unfortunately. And, I think until we get some more general stability on the whole, and everything calms down and inflation's under control and all of the things that we're struggling with at the moment as a country start to be gripped, and to be frank, people at the highest levels grow some spine, which is my kind of concern at the higher levels, not within the CAA, I'm not talking now. All of a sudden, it starts to kind of make sense potentially why there is so much instability. That being said, for me, the issue is one primarily of communication, because, we've known, like we said, we knew what these rules were going to be. I mean, since 2015, we've known, actually, if you've been in the industry and dug into it, since 2015, we knew what the EASA rules were going to be. There was no hiding from them. They were coming. I talked Graham about Jarrus and the fact that we'd been part of that process back in 2015 when he came through one of the very first training courses I did in Oxford years ago. We were telling people about it, but no one cared. And, and now it's all up in the air.
All the rage,
again,
frankly,
now,
isn't it, Jarrus, now?
It is all the rage. Yeah, but what we need is some solid leadership at the top of the country.
Yes.
But that comes down for me as far as within the CAA, and then the comms fall out of that, because it isn't. I say from the outside, right? I don't know, because I'm not with it. I'm not inside the CAA, so I genuinely don't know. From the outside, when you've got a database which we've all paid for as a community effectively, and I think that's fair to say, I don't think I'm overstepping a line there. We have funded that effectively, from what we've been told. So all of a sudden, when you've got that database with all of the people in who are in the different categories, we've got all the people who've got an operator ID, all the people who've got a flyer ID, all the people who've got A2 CFCs, all the people with GVCs, all the people with OSCs. So why are you not, when there is a change, going, oh, there's a change. This new document's come out. We've put it onto Skywise, and here's an email to the 320,000 of people who have an operator ID.
Indeed.
This is, and I don't understand, like, as far as I know, when you do those things, you are effectively signing up and ticking a box to say the CA can contact me if they need to.
And actually, that's one of the things I raised in my interview series with Callum. And I said, why don't you, because that was raised by a lot of viewers saying, this Skywise thing, why don't you automatically get those updates as soon as you've registered for a drone? Just send an email with the new VLOS guidance to all registered operators and flyer ID holders, etc. And then of course you are communicating with a much larger audience. The answer I got back is that they would need to assess the data protection side of things and that type of thing. But you just need a little tick box whenever you renew your ID, whenever you do anything that says, I would like to sign up to the Skywise drone updates, please, tick box. And if you don't want those,
but
then,
it doesn't even apply because it's relevant to what you're doing. It's relevant.
But if you want to go to that,
level,
you can just put a little tick box in there, which again would completely remove the argument of the fact that people don't want that kind of data through. Ironically, when everybody in the comments is screaming, that's exactly what they want.
Sure. They can't afford the stamps for the emails.
Sean.
Yes, sir.
When did you have that interview with Callum?
Oh, crikey!
About 2 months ago,
just before Christmas.
Why haven't they done it by now? This is not hard. This is not hard stuff. It really isn't.
It isn't. And I don't. Obviously, as someone that isn't the CAA himself, that I don't have an answer for that. I was trying to find Ian Simpson's message there actually, but there we go, to bring it up on screen. It's quite funny, isn't it? There's something very British about that insult, which I think is fantastic. Some good.
I think
Well, they can fax me a stamp.
Yeah. At the very basic level, though, right? Like, if I think for me, rather than making it, and I think Mark just put it in there, right? Hearsay, whenever something changes, or us finding out through a Facebook group or a YouTube channel, or us putting it on YouTube, or us as an RAE having to send stuff out. Just send stuff out from the source. Have one person whose job it is in the comms department to send stuff out to the largest now, I think. Again, I think it's right to say, based on the evidence we've seen, the largest group of stakeholders in the aviation space in the UK. Like, send something out. And like I say, it might be more difficult than that, but it certainly should. If it's more difficult than that,
which is
change your process,
exactly,
make it simple.
Exactly. Yes, indeed. And because we're also not talking about a registration scheme that's been in place for 10 years and needs an overhaul. This is a new registration scheme, and surely we could have had a bit more forethought into it as far as what the funnels of information and
what are we going to use
the benefits of those funnels of information as well. Just very quickly, Big Bear, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Good to see you, Mark. All the best to you, and all the best to you back, sir. Thank you for that. One thing I want to
sorry, Sean. On the communication side, I've been trying a number of times since June last year. Do you remember when it was hot? To try and get to speak or to talk or have some sort of communications on behalf of the OSC holders, or forget on behalf of. There's only about 100 OSCs out there, and they're not. Some of them are held by multiple OSCs are held by some companies. So there's probably only about 80 or 90 people we could fit in a room in a hotel, and they can talk to us. There are a number of issues that OSC holders are suffering from, and these are some of the sort of, if you like, the highest performing, busiest operators in the country, operating in cities and in really difficult circumstances, and doing it pretty safely. I think there are exceptions, but there are exceptions everywhere, and those exceptions can be sort of dealt with on an individual basis. But at the moment, those OSC holders have no idea how to invest, because that stuff that's been sorted out, we think, for PDR A01 hasn't been sorted out for OSC holders. So sorry, guys. When you go to renew, you may find your permissions have changed. We didn't have any form of communication with you to tell you that was going to happen. There was no warning, nothing to tell you how you might mitigate against it. But hey, OSC holders. I don't
Indeed.
know.
One thing, just to change the subject very, very slightly, which is this isn't scheduled, so apologies, guys. And it's interesting because I read this in the chat tonight. I read it in this type of topic in the chat a few times actually, and it is one of the things that I highlighted in our run order, which is the community response. And I have to say, one of the things that it doesn't annoy me because I don't allow the haters, as it were, to impact on me too much. And certainly, if you go out and there's some very interesting videos out there that really do dislike me, which is wonderful. I must be doing something right somewhere. But to get the information that people want, then we have to act as professional journalists. If we just sit and scream at the CAA, if they come on for an interview and just say, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, and you don't engage and you don't communicate, we are going to get no information whatsoever. Geeksvana as a channel has brought more information to light about the regulatory system affecting drones in the UK than I would argue any other single media source, and we're a tiny YouTube channel with 20,000 subscribers. I'm never going to stop it. I'm going to continue. It is my passion, but it's hilarious when I see comments in the chat like, "Where's your CAA poodle this week?" But yet then we sit around saying, why aren't the CAA talking to us about this? Why aren't they did? But then we attack people when they come on air. I find it bizarre. You may not like their answers. You may not like the questions I ask them, but it is giving you information. It is holding you to account. When, we have had the CAA on here apologise this evening via a statement for the confusion that they feel they've caused. Here it is again in writing, over the PDRA 01. I've never seen an apology of that type read out on air or published anywhere else. Have you guys?
No. Certainly no.
So it's an interesting situation when that happens, and I just wanted to raise it and just say, guys, there is a method to the madness. It may look like Mr. CAAs on your screen and that type of thing, but there are different methods to accountability. There's different ways to do things. There's the XJet way, there's the UAV hub way of doing things as well, and there's the Geeksvana way of doing things. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing here in the industry, and I'm 110% confident I'm going to continue that way because we're getting the information out there, frankly. So that's my little rant. I apologise. Just very quickly as well, thank you to CJ Drone Photography for your £2 super chat. Keep up the good work, guys. JS Aerial, £5 super chat. Sean, Matt and Graham to run the CAA. No thanks.
No.
Wouldn't pay it. I keep saying this. You can't
couldn't
pay
afford
me
us. No thanks. Leap, no thanks.
I doubt it's an easy job. I very much doubt it's an easy job running the CAA. I doubt at the moment it's an easy job working in the CAA, particularly in some areas. But on the other side, I think they need to accept that it's pretty difficult. Small companies actually keeping afloat at the moment, let alone thriving, and to do that, as we said, we need communications, we need consistency, and we need continuity. And if we don't get those things, then it will be a war of attrition, I suspect, and people will just drop out.
And equally, where the line stops in terms of, in my opinion, in terms of the CAA are doing a hard job and all this sort of thing, which I will often say, and I do believe that, and I do believe there are some very good people working within the CAA as well as those that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's something that we also have to hold them to account from the point of view, of course, that this is their job. It is their sole thing to create a safe airspace for the UK for all stakeholders. So the buck does stop there essentially, and that's really where we do need to start holding these things to account. Very much how the RAEs have with and Matt's work with demanding this meeting and actually getting some action from that point of view. We wouldn't have got the statement today without that action happening. So it's showing multiple stakeholders with Matt's video last week and everything. It all has an impact. Graham's tireless work with his blogs and braving Facebook, which I think is extremely brave. But all of that comes together to get some movement. But of course, the ultimate thing here we have to remember, and I highlighted Mark Armistad's message earlier, that it's not the RAE's job to communicate on behalf of, they're not the mouthpiece of the CAA. And that's the position we need to get to. We need to get to the position where these comms are coming out to every stakeholder. Because it almost feels like, it's so uneven, and the changes in comms recently shows again that there's no stability from that point of view. How do we change this? I know, Matt, leadership is one of your hot topics on this side of things. How do we get there? How do we get this situation under control?
I think I've just had someone come up and say, what's an RAE? Because we keep mentioning it. It's a recognised assessment entity. So they're the 40-ish companies in the UK who are authorised and regulated by the CAA to deliver training and allow people to get effectively their qualifications and their certifications to fly drones of different sizes and in different categories. So, so how do we get there? I think, like I've said, that for me, the leadership thing, and I think the big one is to have, and this is the kind of quick fix that I have suggested to the CAA a number of times now. And again, it might not be as easy as it seems from the outside, but tosses who take your money, Mark Armistead says. Very good. Something like that. Not all of us, mate, not all of us.
Mark Armistead cutting to the heart of the comment. YouTubers can tell you 5 paragraphs to say the same thing as Mark's just put.
That's it. I love it. For me though, the quick fix on that is the comms piece, and that is there is already a comms team at the CAA, right? There are already people within the CAA who are putting their and again, fair play to them, who are putting their careers potentially, as it turns out, on the line by coming onto YouTube channels and things like that, right? They've got the stones to come and do that, which is mega. The CAA need to embrace those kinds of people and have one channel, which is the official CAA comms, right? And they have that. They've got their podcast and their YouTube channel and their Facebook and their LinkedIn. And yesterday, some PR stuff came out. Like, do that. Do it. Choose someone, parachute them in and say, right, here you go. This is the lines to take. We need you to say this to the camera now. And then give it to someone to edit and then give it to the PR people to put online. I know it isn't that simple. I get that, but it should be. And if it isn't that simple, change something so it is.
And if you want a hand, we know a couple of people that would more than happily spend a couple of weeks showing you how to work all the buttons. And because we do get it a little bit in over in the US, the FAA does have an active YouTube channel, and they actually broadcast all of their meetings. So the drone advisory committee meetings and that type of thing get broadcast. To me,
so do we.
Yeah, and to me that gives a bit more accountability, a bit more at least transparency. Okay, and they do have a live chat running, which I think is always very brave. They do say we're not reading the live chat necessarily, but as in for questions for the active meeting, etc. But at least there is that, and I do feel like that's a really good point, Matt, because it feels like they're just behind things. Everything you see on Geeksvana is not some secret source. Everything you see, there is no secret source. There is no magical way. There's no sort of deep throat meetings in underground car parks to tell Geeksvana what's happening with the sea labels before anybody else. None of that's happening.
That's on his OnlyFans channel.
That's exactly, only garages. Can I safely say that no one wants to see that? One of the most, one of the most absolute things I can say. But it's so the communications are there, and shout out to the CAA communications team, and I mean the actual comms team, people like Jonathan Nicholson, etc., who do get that information out to me, but it's because it's there and available to be released. So why why do we have a situation where something appears on Geeksvana and everyone's like, well, that's the first time I've heard of that, when actually they've already done the work by releasing it. That's how I got it. Sorry if I'm starting to
send it out to, like, why don't they do a press release for these things where it's like, right, you know, you can get hold of this thing, and either it is embargoed until this date, which is what happens in most industries, you know, so you can get everything ready and you can have it all set and and have it. I wish I'd never said anything now. His feet pics are available, by the way. He doesn't charge much for that membership. We've taken a turn. But yeah, it's I don't know. For me, it seems like a fairly, you know, simple fix.
Can I jump in and say that there is a bit more to it, and I'm not. I've got to learn not to ask you. And yeah, the communication, yes. The problem is that there isn't one source of communication for these guys. I first found out about the fact that there were people seriously thought in the CAA. They seriously thought last September. And these are people who are making decisions for us. They seriously thought that the current PDRA01, as it was last year, was a 50-meter horizontal column. And that came out not as a result of communications to tell people what's going on and what might be changing. That came out as a result of an audit on somebody's flights. They were looking for an OSC. They got an audit, and the audit came out and said, "Oh, this flight, clearly you weren't 50 meters horizontally from people." And said, "Well, of course we weren't. No, we were flying at 80 meters high and doing a survey." Oh no, you PDRA1, you need to fly 50 meters horizontally from people. Now, that's insane, and those people needed educating. But how the hell is that getting out to people? And that then turns into a rumor. I didn't put it out, but as soon as that rumor started coming out, I could confirm that I've seen this, guys. You know, this is potentially real. This is being talked about. So it's not just communications. There is or has been something going on in the CAA, and what they need to do is you do what happens when I work in manufacturing in the day job. If you get something go wrong, you look at it and you say, okay, we don't like that, but actually, what can we get from that? Root cause analysis. How can we strengthen the product? And the CAA is a product to us. It makes permissions. So you do a root cause analysis and, hey, apply just culture. They should be good at that, eh?
Well, they actually state just culture in their literature.
And
it's the big thing.
Just culture has
They
been mentioned on this channel by several by different people at the CAA as well. So, thank you very much, Simon Stickland, for your £10 super chat and your kind words. I really appreciate it. So good to see you here. And it's you know, I'm not going to. I am actually going to single out. I'm saying I'm not going to single out Simon now, but I am going to single out Simon. But it is people like this that are just trying to get on with running their businesses and doing their job and giving a very good hashtag drones for good image out there in terms of, you know, showing what industry can do and showing what construction, etc., can do with drones. They just want to get on with it and want to plan and want to be able to say, what am I going to be doing in 2023? Are we switching to parachutes and OSCs, or are we doing this? Or are we doing that? And I agree, Graham. There were too many conversations with too many people that had direct conversations and direct things for this not to have been a major issue going on in the background there. And of course, that, you know, the CAA aren't solely responsible for that, and they can't, you know, respond and react to every single rumor. But if there was a clear way of communicating, if there was a clear way of updating that everybody was used to, everyone would go to that forum and they would say in the monthly, you know, a CAA Q&A, YouTube Q&A, and they'd say, hey, we've heard this is what's happening. And they'd say, no, nothing's changing, and it might change in the future, and they could just dispel it straight away. So having that sort of, you know, so I suppose it's, you know, as I was saying, that the drone registration isn't old enough from the point of view that it shouldn't be outdated in terms of the information and the value it can have. The same has to be said from the point of view of the YouTube comms, that actually there is an old way of doing it, and they need to modernize how that happens. Not 90-page public consultations that take 2 monitors and printing off 90 pages and understanding the A&O in detail to know where, and having the old AMC in front of you, and having and then, you know, emailing the police and saying, hey, are you guys going to enforce this? You know, all of these things to just be a hobby flyer, let alone someone carrying out commercial operations.
Yeah. That root
Absolutely.
cause analysis point. Go on. Sorry. No, go.
No, I updated my sort of how to sort out your ops manual blog a couple of weeks ago, and I shouldn't have to have 3 or 4 pieces of legislation and guidance open on my laptop as I'm huddled there on holiday, trying to work out what they want in there, because this leads you to that document and that document leads you over here. That isn't the way it should be.
And this is also the kind of thing as well, isn't it? When we talk about the sort of confusion from the point of view of, some people told, oh, hey, use an approved parachute, but then there isn't an approved parachute on the list, etc., for you to use. And I know that we're getting into the real minutiae of very specific levels of regulation there. But it is one of those situations where I feel like the communications is really where the key is, and we need to unlock that somehow, just to let people know what's going on, because actually I don't think that the hobby flyers needed to be as affected as they have been recently, and certainly the fact that the PDR 1 isn't changing apparently. I still say apparently, then, again, that's a lot of confusion that's been caused. And yes, there's an apology for it, but there also has to be accountability, and there has to be changes to ensure it doesn't happen again in the future, which obviously, yes, that does start with clear leadership. But we have to have that accountability to stop those things happening. Because if you can't even get an edition of Cap 722 right, what hope have you got with more complex things like the AMC and with like OSCs, etc.? It's incredible. Would you both agree that the consultation process doesn't seem to work?
No, because you didn't agree with me earlier.
Yes, because I don't want to agree with him.
Shoots, he scores.
So sorry, Matt, which side were you going down on there? Who are you backing?
I was saying yes because I don't want to agree with him.
I was about to switch to this camera and say, oh dear, we seem to have lost both of our co-hosts. But yeah, and I ranted briefly about it before, yeah. But I do think the whole way of, if and we're told in the interviews with Callum, etc., and we hear it all the time from the CAA that they have to regulate the entire airspace, so they have to regulate everybody from the professional flyer all the way down to the guy that's bought a drone at Argos, etc. And it seems that part of the conversation came up a lot in the interviews, and it comes up a lot when those sort of discussions are happening. Why don't we have
doesn't hold water?
Why don't we have more focus on higher regulation for beginners? And then actually, once you're through a certain process, once you're through a certain period of logs or whatever, and I'm not saying logging your flights, calm down, open category. But once you're past a certain benchmark, then you do have more experienced pilots, do get to do more and have less regulation on their back. Is that a fantasy, Matt, in training and regulation terms?
I mean, it isn't, right? It is something that could be achievable, but again, there are a million ways to skin a cat, and at some point we have to choose the way we are going to skin it, and it has been chosen for us, the route that we're going down, and that is the route. So yeah, I'm sure there could be a way that we could do it. Is it motorbikes? I don't know. I'm not a motorbike rider, so I'm sure chat will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right in saying that kind of motorbikes, if you're young and you get a motorbike, you're only allowed a certain cc motorbike on a license, and then you can step up, or it might be about horsepower, I don't know. Maybe there's something like that, but I don't think that'd work. I don't think that's required. I think it's one of those where, if you want to do certain things, there should just be a way to do that certain thing. That was what the EASA regs were meant to do. When it was sold to us, we were told, look, this is a recipe card. If you want to fly these sized and weight drones in this area, you'll be in this category. Thenceforth, you need this qualification. Okay, cool. That makes sense. I want to go and fly an EasyJet, out of Luton. I need to go and get my frozen ATPL. So you do your training up to your CPL-IR, you get your multi-engine, you get your jet orientation, you get your multi-crew, your MCC certificate, you get your frozen ATPL, and then you go and join and jump in the right hand seat or whatever it is for 1,500 hours, and then that gets unlocked from a frozen ATPL to an ATPL. So those things do exist, but I just think the way we had it before worked. The way that we had it before Christmas this year worked. The way it currently is, actually, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, is no different than how it was before Christmas, really. It's been like this for the last 2 months, and people don't know where they're at. So they're just like, oh, do you know what? I give up. I can't keep up. So this is where this whole, look, everyone chill, CAA chill, get the work done, and get the comms out there so that we all know in a very
but also
simple
get the
way,
consistency.
this is what you can and can't do.
Stop with releasing 722. I mean, it shouldn't take a YouTuber, a small YouTube channel, and Graham Degg to pick up the errors in 722 and 722H, and to be able to and it didn't exactly take us long to tear these documents apart.
I'm a part-timer. I don't do this. I make things.
One thing I would say, and thank you, Tellerion, for raising it, is starting off too hard would deter compliance to those entering the activity, and that is a really good point. And that's something that myself and Matt have even spoken about before, as far as families just building a model aircraft together and going and flying it. The last thing I would want to do is be a gatekeeper or have too high a bar, where I already think with age limits and registrations and parents having to take responsibility for the child's registered aircraft and that type of thing is already setting things too high for people starting off. So it's a really good point. Thank you for that. Revbo does also say the BMFA have been doing just that for years, which is also true, and also is shines through from the fact that it's a very safe hobby, the RC hobby, here in the UK, especially with the BMFA clubs, etc. So yes, thank you. It's good to have these conversations out, but I also want to recognise when the audience come up with some very good counters.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting actually, because there's always this thing, right, about old drones. They ruined ruined the hobby for fixed wing old fuddy-duddies or whatever they may be. I don't know how many people I've insulted just there.
I fixed wing.
Certainly, you're an old fuddy-duddy.
Right, I'm off.
So actually, they've got their own back recently, haven't they? Because what they've been doing is reporting incidents. And hey, guys, if you really want to hurt the drone community, report incidents, because what happens is the CAA count all of those incidents, and then they sort of use them possibly against PDR-AO1 operational authorization holders. Is that unfair when they sort of bulk them all up and put them together and say, there are that many crashes this year, and so therefore you can't fly in the town centre and you can't do this and you can't do it. You think, hold on a minute, it was only that many. And I think there's a video coming out on that one as well, Sean. But
yes, we have Graham's first,
hanging on about.
Graham's first couple of videos coming very soon.
I'll apologise in advance.
No, they're very good actually. And it is a difficult process to find the right level. But all that I know is that the level of people. So during that 2 years that myself and Matt were putting out lots of videos to get people into the EU EASA regs, whatever you want to call them this week, with the C labels coming and A2C of Cs. During that process, during that couple of year process, I really felt like we were getting people established and they were gaining confidence. Suddenly, we're back to a situation with things like the AMC and C labels and the confusion, etc., where I'm getting messages again from people saying, I want to fly here and I've got this and I've got that. Am I all right doing that? And I haven't had those for a little while. And we're starting to see those again, obviously, particularly and especially from the hobby. And that does concern me, because it does, I do feel like it's pushed back, which is it's a concern, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's always going to be, and I think that just comes from this lack of clarity and the confusion and the instability and the lack of it's all this this bugger's model, if you like, of no one really knows where they're at. So this is why we just need to I think, and to be fair to them, the CAA in the meeting on Monday with the REs did say, look, we haven't done the best job at communicating to you guys and running this forwards. We apologize for that. We are going to change and we are going to listen to you. It isn't a free for all in terms of, you guys we're not going to be able to decide what the rules are going to become. But because and they've not got an easy job because they're never going to please everybody. I'll come back to that. Was the proof will be in the pudding, but you do need to communicate it, and so we do need to give them a chance. I think is the big thing. That being said, it is their job to do, and I think it is still up to us to hold them to the standards that we need to have.
No, exactly, and that
from it, so that we can do things safely.
That really does, and a lot of the frustration that I have and that I feel sometimes towards how things are being handled and towards just getting straight answers sometimes and that type of thing is that actually this isn't me chatting to Graham, which happens an awful lot, or me chatting to Matt, which again we all have all these. Probably for our personal lives, far too many conversations about all of this stuff behind the scenes while we build our stories, etc. But and that's all very well and good. But actually, these are the people that are supposed to know. These are the people that are leading the airspace for us. And of course, the CAA don't just isn't just the drone regulator. They are the airspace regulator. So they should have a pretty good handle across all stakeholders and across all forms of air travel. And it frustrates me from that point of view. And it's good to see some of the communication that started to happen. It's good to see the statement that was issued today. It's good to hear things like the REE meetings. I understand that's going to happen once a quarter now. Is it, Matt, or something of that frequency?
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing again, and I think anything that increases communication is a fantastic thing because you're then getting direct feedback from people. But what I would like to see, and one of my campaigns for 2023, especially as we head towards the open category investigation, is to make the consultations as accessible as possible, even if it means multiple versions of the consultation. Yeah. So here is the consultation. Here's the Graham Degg, Matt Williams, Sean Hickey version, and it's 500 pages, and it's got every tiny little nook and cranny in there. Here's the one that's going to affect the PDA-01 holders, and here's the one for the hobby, which has got the bits focused on it. Because again, which to be fair, during the AMC with this new VLOS guidance, we did put out a video with the CAA on the channel, and they did point out the page numbers that would be particularly interesting, such as the VLOS, to the community. So they're thinking they need to do that, but they need to do that themselves formally and through the consultation process to make it as easy as possible, frankly. Just in my personal opinion, of course.
I was thinking about what you were saying with sort of the lack of confidence that people are starting to show, and it's almost like having a sort of having parents who, I don't know, they perhaps row a little bit and you can overhear them at night, and you sit on the stairs and you're a little bit scared. But they get you worked up, So last year we were getting quite worked up and quite excited because we've been promised really nice presents at Christmas of we might well extend your permissions. You can go out and fly those drones you've already got. You can go and enjoy that a little bit more. And hey, I believe that DJI are launching a new drone. You can get that and you can go and fly that anywhere. And then right just before Christmas, right, they snatch it out of your hand and say, yeah, but it's not for you. It's not
and the whole time
that's mine. I've got an
but you see the frustration there, the very serious frustration there is the whole time that was happening, and other people were releasing videos saying, hey, the C1, you can fly it in the UK, crack on. I was making a video saying I think it would be irresponsible to say that because it's not going to happen. Not because I had some kind of secret source, but because I was reading the communications that were coming out from the CAA, etc. So, but surely that should have been something that should have been nipped in the bud.
That should have been 18 months before.
But is that not an air safety issue, that there are videos up on and there is information out there saying you can? Of course, they're still there. That are saying you can fly the C1 drone in the UK. You can still go and watch those on other people's channels. That are saying you can crack on and do it, and that in itself should have some kind of. There is no official, as Matt said, a YouTube channel or something that would make all of those comms far more interesting. So
I think, can I just jump on one thing that I've seen come up a couple of times in the chat, people saying about the REEs having I'm going to stop asking.
I think we know how we're going to work from now on.
I get this, right? So I just want to say something about the RAEs. So I've seen a couple of you mention it. About I think people getting potentially a little bit wound up about the fact that the REs have got these quarterly meetings now. There is nothing, as far as I'm aware, really released at those RE meetings which would have any material impact on people already operating or the hobby or things like that. It's more us asking for clarification or getting and seeking clarification. It's an opportunity for us to do that on the things that affect the training that we deliver. So it's not a regulatory kind of stakeholder party meeting. It is a look, when we help people with their ops manuals and they get them rejected because of this, what do we need to be telling them? What advice and guidance do we need to be giving them? It's not a we're not getting like inside information into what the CAA are thinking. Far from it. No. It's
I can, as someone that has that accusation thrown at me a lot, I can categorically tell you that they will not release things until they're absolutely ready, and that release is there for everybody. What we're saying is they need to get that out to everybody. There's actually a lot of good information sat on desks. And sat on obscure website pages and etc., which needs correlating into one communication thing. You can appoint Geeksvana as the official CAA comms channel. Everyone thinks I am already, so I'd be more than happy.
That's the point, right? Like, that is the point. Why not? Why not give that comms to a team like us and say, right?
Because I don't want to be lynched in the street.
Well, yeah, I know, and I'm not saying I would do that, because people are like, oh, Matt should apply to join the CAA and be the boss at the CAA. I'm like, no, thanks. If you guys want that to happen, message the CAA, because they would love that, for you to turn around and say, we want Matt Williams as the chair or the CEO at the CAA. He's awesome. They would love you for that, because they hate me, I think. So, it's...
Matt, this is a sort of fairly key question, and to me goes directly to safety. Can I ask a question about the meeting, please?
No.
No.
He's not getting it, is he? He's not getting how it works on Geeksvana.
Flight, and I apologise to the hobbyists who won't know what I'm banging on about, but flight distance from assemblies of people, 50 metres horizontally, then 1-to-1 rule, which I'll say to you, and you'll immediately process and say, yeah, understand exactly what you're saying. There's a whole load of people out there who've never, ever been taught that. There is no diagram showing that in any of the CAA's documentation, including CAP 722H, which says that that's what you must do. It has to be taught as part of the syllabus for an A2 CFC, but people who haven't been flying to that for years all of a sudden have to assimilate that and do something completely different to what they used to. How do you think that affects safety?
I think... and I don't think it's necessarily anything to do with anything that was said in the meeting, because it's something overall, right? We need to make, and this is one of the things for me that I think one of the reasons why the stuff Sean and I did when the EASA stuff was coming in, I think we did really well, and that's why we got so much traction, right? That's why I got those 10,000 subs in a couple of months, and Sean did very similar, because we took stuff that's very complex and complicated and in aviation speak, and made it simple. And that is the trick, right? When all of this comms has been done by the CAA, it needs to be, for me, it needs to be appropriate to the people that it is being used by. So exactly what you've just said, it's nothing to do with REEs, and someone else has asked, it's recognised assessment entity. They're the people who train in the UK, are authorised to train people. Thank you, Simon. Is that Andy that's popped that in? Yeah, thanks, mate. So it's one of those where it's I don't think it should be down to us. And the CA, to be fair to them, I'm doing a lot of this tonight. I'm defending what?
Yeah, can I just say?
Job,
can I just
guys?
say there
Put
is
me onto
no?
that job.
I'm not holding a gun to Matt's head this evening. There is no sort of Kalashnikov rifle off camera saying you haven't said you support the CIA enough times.
That's it. Oh my god. Yeah, so no, it's they actually, I think, did a reasonable job of this in the old Cap 722 and in the drone code and stuff, where they actually did the images,
pictures.
And
Nice
the pictures,
yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
We need more of that, please, Jonathan. If you're listening, please,
but
bring more of those pictures out.
Generally speaking, when we're training people to operate in congested areas and close to assemblies of people with drones up to 25 kilos, we sort of consider that, the CIA consider that to be a higher risk, more complex environment, and therefore you'd expect it to need some sort of training or retraining for those who learnt the 150 meter rule or last year's rule, which was a bit different because it was 50 meters and you go to 400 feet. That's changed, and people will not know that's changed. I'm confident that 3,699 operators will not understand that.
100%. And this is why this comms piece direct from the CAA with one outlet that goes out to everyone who is affected by that change is so critical to flight safety. And this is my entire point, right? If you watched my video last week, it wasn't me. I mean, I was getting upset at the time because we were put in a position where we couldn't answer people's questions, which I hate, because I am that person who gets the answers and puts them out simply to people because of flight safety. And this is my point behind everything I've always done. Every time I've asked the CAA and tried to hold them to task, much to my own detriment a lot of the time, it's been a flight safety thing. And that's what this is. It is a critical flight safety point that people, like you say, once they've left the RAEs, once they've left their training company, they are up to date with the current rules and regulations. And that's, by the way, I think answering Simon's question, that's why a couple of the things in the RAE meeting, quite rightly, if you knew what they were, and I get that it's caused a bit of frustration, quite rightly were held back from general public release, because they are things that we need to generate in the training to have out there ready for things like that. Like how do we do these diagrams for things and make it make sense? And so there's genuinely, from what and you guys know that I would put my neck on the line to give you this if it was there, right? It's not that I don't care, but I'm beyond the point of keeping things to myself in a way. But if it's red lighted, it's red lighted for a reason, and there's no cloak and dagger there. It was purely to say, this is something that you need to think about and generate, because it's going to affect the way you teach stuff in the future. Because there is stuff in the training which in itself does speak to air safety, and I fully support the notion that RAEs should be very much in that inner circle of knowing exactly what's coming around the corner, so they can prepare, so they can get ready, so they can warn people. And as you say, Matt, so they've got the answers. From that point of view, again, RAEs are not the only stakeholders, and as they stakeholder.
It starts to, when you say it too many times, it starts to lose its meaning a little bit, doesn't it? But we need to ensure that my thing is they need to engage all of them. I honestly wish that I did not have to talk about regulations so much on this channel. It is not something that I've got a trip to Ukraine coming up. I've got all sorts of awesome things, and the wonderful video we had last week, which was the little mini documentary showing the police use of drones, that type of thing. I've got a lot of projects that I want to work on, a lot of things that I want to do on this channel. I personally wish I didn't have to bring comms regarding regulation. I would still, of course, report it. It would be great, but I wish there wasn't a need for it, if that makes sense, and I genuinely feel that way.
But we could get rid of it. Coming back to Graham's initial point and saying,
Thanks.
like, what could we do? You could get rid of it. Yeah, that's it. Well, we did that the other week when he just fell off the line.
just to explain to everybody, I exited one of our group chats, which we have regularly to discuss the stories we're working on, in a very dramatic way, and it did look like the end of Geeksvana, which come on, with my health problems recently, and I'm not exactly the smallest guy. You would believe it. You would believe it. I came back into the meeting with them discussing who has my mobile number and who should call the ambulance.
That's it. Oh my God, where is he? Is he at the studio or is he at home? Where do we send the ambulance to? But yeah, just very quickly, super simple fix. Once they've left the training establishments, for me, then it should be a bit like, I suppose, the DVLA, right? I mean, the onus is on the person to make sure that they are up to the latest version of the highway code. But I know certainly when significant things changed, I mean, I've had letters through the door when certain things have changed that have been important, right, with the law and the DVLA side of things. Or if not a letter, I've had an email. And you think, okay, cool, that kind of makes sense. And maybe that's something I signed up to. I don't know. But why are those comms not going out? When something does significantly change, send them a new diagram. Right, guys, this is what we mean when we talk about this. And then, funny old thing, underneath the diagram in the email, here's a link to our YouTube video that explains it better on our channel, where you can see, blah, doing it, done. Like, how simple a process is that? And how much more invested would we all feel as a community? And how much safer would we be as operators?
So,
if that was the way to do it.
Rounding up this evening's show, because obviously we could talk about this for 4 more hours, and we probably will over the weekend. But lose my number, Graham. Really, the thing we keep coming back to is communication, and not communication to a journalist or an RAE, but getting the communication out to the people who are flying, who want to start the flying, who are running businesses and that type of thing. The communication to the final stakeholder. There you go. I can't say it now without thinking of Andy Cortez's stake. To the final user. That is where I think we all agree the work really needs to happen in terms of creating that stability and also keeping the changes away from the coalface until they're ready, until they're peer reviewed and tested and almost focus grouped. Why don't we focus group 722 with a group of professionals and a group of hobbyists? I know it's more work, but it only took a couple of YouTubers and a few experts to tear the last one apart. So surely it's something that would be useful and would perhaps save a few red faces. But we need to get the comms, we need to get the information to the people who need it, which is then going to create much more air safety and much more compliance, because people will understand it and they'll be happier to follow it, as the position I feel like we were getting to.
Yeah. 100%.
So thank you very much for joining us. Now, if you want to find out more about this man, as I ignore Graham making loud keyboard noises, I must get him that new microphone. It's not his fault. It's my fault. If you want to find out more about this man, Matt Williams, the drone mentor, and sign up to one of his awesome classes. He actually now has a wonderful business surrounding drones, which has nothing to do with regulation, which must be a wonderful place to be, Matt.
Lucky man.
Yeah,
OnlyFans. I think,
yeah, go and check out thedronementor.com. Just go over to it. There's free downloads. There's a whole bunch of free stuff. It's all about personal development and business development. And, we teach people how to do sales and marketing and all sorts of stuff. Everything around the drone industry that, people think they get the drone and a website and the licenses or qualifications and they're going to make money. It's not the case. It's like any other business, and that's what we teach people. So yeah, thank you.
It's actually I've just put it in the chat, and so did Andy Cortez actually, so it's just gone in there twice. So
come on, dronementor.com.
And if you want if you want someone to put your OS to completely write your OSC for you word for word,
you can
and go
I'm
and
not going to
answer
say
all
the
the
words.
CAA emails on your behalf until they've got exactly the OSC you want, then IUP Aerial Solutions, a link is in the chat in the description as well. But seriously, if you want to employ a fantastic consultant in the airspace, Graham's services are available.
But also, if you cannot sleep tonight, then just go to the blog page, and there's a load of blogs on there. Some of it's out of date, but I think some of it comes up from a more unusual angle. And of course, some of the latest ones are on Geeksvana.news.
Yes, they are indeed. Which is we're also very soon we'll have our first articles there from John Coopy, our FPV editor, who's actually doing a beginner's write-up on there, which I'm very, very excited about. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really do appreciate it. We have got some fun shows about drones coming up. We've got some more serious stuff as well, because we do have some fun shows coming up on the drones. I did spot one of our very long-term supporters, Mike Drennan, in the chat saying, hey, we don't seem to have fun talking about drones anymore, but we do have a viewer video show coming up very soon, and lots of fun updates and bits and pieces as well. I also have a video coming up next week explaining how you can decipher and find out where all these mystical airspace restrictions are that you see pop up around prisons, and random little bits of things with strange R numbers next to them, etc. on Drone Assist. And can I fly my drone there or not? Is it helicopters only? What is it? I have a video explaining all of that coming up, and one web link you can go to find out where all of those restrictions are in the UK. And can someone tell me why that isn't a much more publicised web link?
We put it in our courses.
I think that's where I first found out about it.
It's almost like you'd need a regulator to communicate that sort of thing, Sean.
It's almost like a central place, central, clean and easy place for people to find things out. Yet again,
the black cars are going to be waiting outside your house.
My OSC is in for renewal. I've written it off.
So yet again, the information was already out there. I'm just going to put it into a 6-minute video for you. Yes, keep an eye out for that one, because it is a much requested one. But thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. See you, chat.